Hello, I'm Donald Levitt. I'm the chair of Maize and Blue Courage. Of the 8 University of Michigan regents, there are 2 positions which are up for re-election this year. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party will each have 2 candidates for regent in the November election. The Republicans have selected their 2 candidates. The Michigan Democratic Party will select their 2 candidates at their convention on April 19th. There are 3 people running for the 2 Democratic Party regent positions. This evening, we have an opportunity to interview one of those candidates, Paul Brown. Paul earned his BA and MBA from the University of Michigan and received his JD from Wayne State University. He began his career as an attorney and law clerk to federal Judge John O'Meara. He then joined the Granholm administration, serving as Vice President of Capital Markets at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Paul was also appointed by President Biden to serve on the U.S. Treasury Small Business Administration Lending Advisory Council. Paul has taught finance and entrepreneurship at the University of Michigan College of Engineering as a member of the Lecturers Employee Organization Union, that's LEO. Paul was elected to the Board of Regents in 2018 and is running for re-election.
6:30. How was class?
After Paul offers his opening comments, we'll open the floor for questions, and we will be ending at 9 o'clock.
No, everybody came back.
Yeah. Well, some people.
Okay, and with that, Paul, I'd like to turn it over to you. Paul, I'd like to turn it over to you. I know
Thank you.
you had somebody else taking your attention there, but
I did. Thank you. I'm still in the
that's-
parking lot of the Kent County Dems meeting, and someone just walked up.
Listen, when you're campaigning, you can't say, "Hey, go away." So I understand that. That makes sense. Okay. Well, Paul, I just gave a little introduction. Why don't you just give us a little introduction to yourself, and then we'll ask some follow-up questions.
Yeah, so a little bit more about myself and a little bit more about kind of my thoughts about joining the board and what I have what we've accomplished to date. I grew up in northern Michigan. I think that's central to kind of my regency. As you know, University of Michigan is a statewide institution. The taxpayers of Michigan from across the state contribute to the university. Yet I'm the only regent on the board that grew up anywhere more than 30 miles away from Ann Arbor. And so I try to represent those constituents that maybe didn't grow up, in Metro Detroit / Ann Arbor. The other is I grew up in a union household. My mother was a Teamster. I had my first union job as a seafarer on the Straits of Mackinac. And I, as I mentioned later, taught in the engineering school at University of Michigan as an AFT Leo member. And so in deciding to run for the position 8 years ago, it was, as mentioned, I was actually recruited back from New York at a big law firm post federal clerkship. I worked at a firm called Skadden Arps in Manhattan, and was recruited back by then Governor Granholm to run an economic development investment and lending program for the state. And that was during the Great Recession. And we really saw that the country was hurting, as they say, when the country catches a cold, Michigan gets the flu. And that was very much true during that period. But we looked around at the regions at the country that were, still hurting, but doing better than the rest of the country. And those were regions that were anchored by large research universities. But the state of Michigan and the Midwest in general was, even though it had several outstanding research institutions, universities, the benefit of those universities to the region was muted for some reason. University of Michigan now has over $2 billion of research, and it had nearly that 8 years ago, and yet very little in translation, commercialization, and therefore economic impact, but as well as impact on society, the healthcare innovations that can occur but need to get to the marketplace to really have impact. And so I really joined the board to try to magnify the impact of the university economically on our state, region, and country, as well as the thought that universities, particularly University of Michigan, considering it's the largest employer in the state, second largest healthcare system in the state, is uniquely positioned to have an impact on our society's greatest challenges, which I believe still are cost and access to education, cost and access to healthcare. And then there are many other important ones as well. And if the University of Michigan, who is uniquely positioned to have an impact on those issues, could have a positive impact on those issues, in my mind, by using progressive policies. Not only could that help our own community, but also as a leader, the University of Michigan is often emulated by others in our industry, healthcare and education. That knock-on effect could even be greater than our own direct effect. And so I've worked really hard to really implement progressive policies at the University of Michigan in order to support our own community as well as the broader community. And some of the, I think, most important things we've accomplished in that time was we passed the most progressive organizing policy of any university in the country. And we went in just 7 years. I think this is unprecedented. It's a little embarrassing to toot your own horn, but I think it's important that everyone recognizes what the university has accomplished. In those 7 years, because of this policy, we went from a situation where there hadn't been a new union formed in Michigan in years, if not decades. We doubled the number of unions in 7 years, from 9 to 18, 9 new unions in 7 years. We doubled the percentage of union employees at the University of Michigan from 26% to now over 50%. And the wages of union workers in those 7 years have gone up 47%, as opposed to only 23% for non-union workers. Yet our budget has never been stronger. Our brand has never been stronger, which is shown by our applications, obviously, to our various schools, as well as the demand of our healthcare system. So I think we're really proving that those progressive policies work in making the University of Michigan the best in class. The other, I think, important aspect is, which is, of course, very progressive, which I don't know what the political persuasion of your members are, but that is mine, is we had the most aggressive and largest diversity, equity, inclusion budget of any university in the country. We have now changed the name of those programs to Access and Opportunity for various reasons, but invested heavily, continue to invest heavily, and we have increased students of color at the university. This is an amazing stat, but it's true. In 7 years by 184%. We are now over 40% of our student body are students of color, which is higher than the state or national population averages. Lastly, I think it's important to mention that we lived in a state 30, 40 years ago that had a very progressive, in fact, the whole country, most public, this great experiment of publicly owned and supported higher education, I think created the strongest economy in defense the world had ever seen. And about 30 years ago in the state of Michigan, particularly during Governor Engler's administration, dismantled this kind of model of a progressive tax system where 70% of in-state students' tuition was covered by contributions by the state budget. Now that's less than 10%. Our endowment kicks in more to our general fund than the state of Michigan. And so we have really obviously the cost of education has skyrocketed, and who does that hurt? That hurts the poorest of our community. And so we created what's called the Go Blue Guarantee, free tuition to in-state students from families that make less than $65,000 a year. We just raised that to now, we've raised it a couple times over these 7 years, but now this incoming class, it's any family who makes less than $125,000 a year gets free tuition. In fact, any family of 210,000 gets some level of support. They don't pay the full ticket price. That has resulted to the incoming class this coming fall 2026. 33% of Michigan students on our Ann Arbor campus will go tuition free. 42% of our Flint, Michigan students will go tuition free, and 50% of our Dearborn students from Michigan will go tuition free. So, real impact that is going to hopefully have, and I believe will have generational impact on those students and their families. So, those are some of the things that I think are particularly important that I've been focused on. There's obviously many more, like climate change and our LGBTQ impacts. And those have all been complicated by the current federal administration and their kind of efforts to fundamentally change the relationship between the federal government and universities, i.e., kind of academic freedom. But we're still, I think, able to maintain the benefits of the programs we've created. So I apologize for the long
No, thank you.
speech,
Thank
but
you.
that's a
Thank
lot
you,
of data.
Paul.
Sure.
I'll open it up for questions. I have questions, but I'm
No.
opening it up for those in the meeting who'd like to ask a question, if anybody would like to. David, unmute yourself, David.
Sorry about that. First of all, how long are the terms for the board?
Great question, and I'll get a little broader. So the
Okay.
board was set up as almost a independent branch of the government. We can't tell the executive or legislative branch what to do, and they can't tell us what to do. In the 1964 Constitution, they set up eight-member board, 2 members up every 2 years for 8-year terms.
8-year terms. Got it.
Yeah.
And you have served 1 year. Do I have that right? I'm
No,
sorry.
no,
One term.
correct. One term.
Yeah,
I'm in the 7th year of my first term.
Got it. Our group is mostly formed for the purpose of resisting the push from the Trump administration.
Oh, wonderful.
So just in case you didn't know who we were.
I didn't really,
So I think it's incumbent upon us to clarify it to you that
Thank you.
we are here to make sure that the board is strong enough to resist the push from the Trump administration
Yeah.
to take over and to intimidate the university and to attack intellectuals.
Yep.
Attacking universities and attacking intellectuals along with the courts, the media, the press,
Yeah.
and the arts. That's what authoritarians do.
Yep.
So I'll just leave it open at that point. Are you going to take very strong stands against the push from the Trump administration to crack down on free research and free thought?
Great question, and an amazing purpose for a group. I thank every one of you. We need all the help we can get in that regard. I think there are a lot of threats to our country and our way of life. This one is as big as any. That's a big statement, but it's, I think, I hold universities and their impact on society in a very high regard. And to go a little deeper, our system of federally supporting university research institutions, which you probably all know, I'm telling the people who probably know a lot more about it than I do, was really set up post World War II. They looked at all the models around the world, everything from very centralized government labs, Germany very heavily in that, to a more decentralized private sector or decentralized kind of university lab system. And rightly, our society, after a long, well thought out debate, decided the best way is to diversify and for federal government funding to go into universities, not into large government labs, although we have a couple. And Trump is fundamentally changing that relationship that I think has existed, decades, 60, 70 years, and given us the strongest economy and defense the world has ever seen. Yet we aren't having this debate publicly. And they're just doing it. And I don't even think the American people realize how important and how fundamentally he's trying to change that relationship. He's obviously trying to change it, not because he believes it's a better system but because, to your point, he wants to control. He wants to control it, which is what totalitarians do. And so a couple things. One, we got rid of a president, Ono, who would not stand up to Trump. That was the fundamental disagreement that we tried to keep in house. I helped author a statement that we tried to get the New York Times to publish, but they didn't. But we published it in the Daily, which you can go back and read, which just basically said we need, especially as the premier public university in the country, we need, even in a non-political way, we need to engage with the public in this debate. And we had a president that just didn't want to and tried to run off to Florida. And as I say, it was the greatest career mishap since Shelley Long, miscalculation since Shelley Long left Cheers. But good riddance. He had many great qualities. His ability and willingness to stand up to the Trump administration wasn't one of them. Another, I think, important thing is I have been one of the named plaintiffs in 12 lawsuits against the Trump administration as they relate to the university. But I don't know if we've always got it right. We have a majority of the board that obviously disagrees strongly with Trump. But I don't always agree with my majority colleagues on how to do that. I think in many ways what we did, so this is unprecedented. And I give some grace to the administration and my colleagues on how to handle this. When do we sacrifice our own colleagues, our own members, our own patients to take on a broader fight, and get a spotlight and a bullseye on us from the Trump administration, which he's insidious on how he punishes and goes after opponents. And so do you sue him head on like we've done 12 times? And we've won every time. There's 5 still pending. We've won every other time. And in some circumstances, like DEI, we changed the name to Access and Opportunity. We did do some streamlining of the operation, which I supported because I support DEI. I think it's one of the fundamental things we need to do as an institution. And that, frankly, was kind of a head shake. We were hoping that the Trump administration was too dumb and too distracted to recognize what we did by increasing the budget and just changing the name. And frankly, to this point, doesn't surprise me, they are that stupid. They have not punished us for that. I think transgender is another issue where they are going after, like any weak bully does. They go after the absolute weakest in society, and they're going after transgender kids. And I have been very outspoken at my colleagues' unwillingness to be more outspoken on that issue. So I don't know if we've always got it right. Mm-hmm. I'd say I am very much on the extreme in terms of aggression against the Trump administration, but overall the university is trying. Sometimes I think they balance safety and silence too heavily, but I don't. So yeah.
Thank you. Excellent answer.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. I'd like to follow up on the DEI. The university has sued the Trump administration many times, but you chose not to sue regarding DEI. You've just continued those activities under a different name. And yet it's my understanding that faculty and what they're teaching and their research are very concerned. Are very concerned about what they say and what they research. And in some ways, they don't feel that the Regents have their back.
Yeah, that's one thing that we always struggle with, and I think as an institution don't do very well. We have some people on the board whose business is communication and marketing. You take Mark Bernstein, for example, or Denise Illich, good liberal progressive regents who understand how to communicate, and they are up in arms constantly at the inability of the institution to communicate better. And I'd say, in large part, that is that is what is creating that unease with the faculty. And I don't blame the faculty. I blame, the administration. And I would say the board is begging, trying, getting in the weeds with communication and getting pushback from the administration. We in large part are sometimes not taking on the Trump administration head on in order to protect those faculty members. The DEI decision, I don't know if it's the right one. It's not my natural instinct, but so far it's worked. And I have been, and I'll say, very disappointed in SACUA's inability to understand nuance and strategy, and unwillingness to collaborate and participate in the strategies that have been decided upon. Now, if they disagree with them, I guess I can't blame them for not participating. But we have been a little uneasy. There was no one. The Trump administration didn't do anything with DEI. They just threatened schools that still had it will do X, Y, and Z. And so there was nothing to sue over unless we, poked them in the eye and said, we're keeping all of our DEI programs, which arguably is the largest DEI budget of any school in the country, kind of famously. We could have done that, poked them in the eye, and then got sued then they would have done something like withheld Medicare reimbursement, student loan reimbursement. That's how insidious they threaten, to hit the nuclear button, and which will devastate some members of our community. I think we would win in the courts eventually. Then we could have sued them. And we decided, no, let's just keep our funding and see if we can avoid them coming at us. And we have. And again, I don't know if that's the right decision. I'm disappointed in some of our faculty's interpretation of what we've done, because we did it to support them and our students. But they may be right. They may be right. I don't know.
Well, we're getting towards the top of the hour. I do want to finish right at the top of the hour.
I
to
have
ask
plenty
you,
of time, so don't on my part. You don't need
thank
to.
you. Maybe we'll go a little over.
Sure.
Along the line of the seemingly to comply with the Trump administration is the issue of gender affirming care
Yep.
for minors. And
Yep.
this is a very serious issue.
Ugh.
And it just seems like something did not go right on that issue.
Yeah, and what I fear is a precedent setting issue. Because once they tell you, they go after the weakest group, transgender youth, then what's next? Women's health. And I to my colleagues in the administration, I said, when will we fight back? Is it when they go after, rich white men's Viagra? We need to fight back now. And as you know, I have a transgender goddaughter and niece who I love very much and has gotten amazing care at the university. Frankly, the regents were willing to fight on that one. The doctors who I have, let's just, all the respect in the world over, they were threatened, and it is going to happen. The person who heads that center, I have to be careful what I say because of attorney-client privilege, is in huge jeopardy, and they are going to try to ruin his life. And he is he's dedicated his life to this care. And despite what the university is doing, they are still going to go after him because he's considered such a luminary in the industry. The university backed down. the doctors en masse who are all being threatened with criminal prosecution by the Trump administration en masse said we can't we just can't go forward with this care. And I've, as you may know, I've been very outspoken, speaking at every Regents meeting about it since it happened several months ago. But I I think our heads should be exploding over this as a university. And we don't want to call out the doctors for their consideration of themselves. But we should be doing much more. And it breaks my heart as someone who this touches their family very intimately. And I know there were statements, and let's see if I can read them. Or maybe you can see them.
In the chat.
Yeah. Let's assume trans kids are the weakest.
Yeah.
Can we just say vulnerable? That's a much better term. I agree. Because they are some of the strongest people I've ever met.
I think we should continue a little bit more. It's just a little before 9. I have another question, but I'm open if others have another question. I'd like to talk about ICE on campus and
Yep.
Brown University. I'm going to read to you the 5 steps Brown University is planning to take. There are 5 steps. I know you and I have talked about this before about it. So
Yeah.
Brown says, number 1, rejecting ICE cooperation agreements. I'll go through all 5.
Yep.
I'm sure you're doing it. Number 2, limiting information sharing.
Yep.
Creating clear signage for private spaces.
Yep.
Training campus police, number 4. And 5, planning for ICE incursions.
Yep.
Well, I guess and then 6 is disclosing ties to ICE. Oh, and prohibiting ICE recruitment. So
Yeah.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, this is another strange thing. We had our geo members. That's the student, the graduate student teachers, put out a letter statement which basically condemned the university, the board, for what, if you read it, and I wish you wouldn't, but I actually wish you would. For being ICE collaborators of some kind, and it even cited several universities and several communities as being sanctuary campuses and what they have done. I then went to every one of those links, which they were very well linked, and read up on what every one of those communities and universities were doing. And the University of Michigan is doing every single one. And I mean, some schools are doing 3 things, these 3 things, and in other schools are doing these 3 things, and there have some overlap, but there's, what is that? 5 things total. We're doing all 5. And I had a long talk with members of that group about that. ICE has never been on our campus. We have put out a policy and several public statements about that policy of we are created what I call a sanctuary campus. ICE is prohibited from our campus, and we have stated that it would be trespassing if they go on what we call controlled, which is all you can do. They can drive down the streets of Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti, but they are prohibited from our property. We created an ICE, what we call a SWAT team of lawyers and public safety professionals and published the hotline. If anyone sees ICE on campus, they are to call the hotline, and this SWAT team will respond to kick ICE off of our campus. We publicly stated ICE claims that they can enter these private spaces if they have what they term as an administrative warrant. We have publicly stated to them that no, that is not allowed. We will not give you admission. You must have a judicial warrant. And we've even stated to all of in these statements we've made publicly and circulated to our community that even if they show up with a judicial warrant, do not allow them entry. We will come with lawyers and police to try to challenge that. We have, if you go through those 6, I would like to comment on each one of them. But the last thing that is, because I think we're doing every single one of those, the last thing that I have not seen any other university do is we have boycotted. We have about an $18 billion budget. We're arguably, depending on what GM is that day, the largest employer in the state. And we have boycotted any business that will do business with ICE.
Let me go through just for the sake of comprehensiveness.
Yeah.
So number one is rejecting ICE cooperation agreements.
Yeah. We've signed and will never sign any agreement with ICE.
And limiting information sharing.
Zero information sharing. And, they've subpoenaed our transgender health records, and we will, over our dead body, will we ever share that information? We're in the process of fighting it now.
Creating clear signage for private spaces.
Yeah, I think you brought this up.
I did bring that up
last time, and I immediately reached out to our provost for the academic side and our hospital CEO, and they're in full agreement. And our hospital, I think, is doing a better job trying to create that signage. They put out information defining what that is to all of our community, and they are trying to roll out signage as quickly and as best they can. I don't know if it's perfect yet, but they're trying.
Let me hit the rest of these. Planning for ICE incursions.
Yeah, that's our SWAT team. Yeah, we've had a whole education, and luckily we haven't had to implement it, but I think they're prepared.
Disclosing ties to ICE. I guess those would be business ties.
I guess we have no ties to ICE. They haven't been on our campus. You talked about
the Avello airline or one of the airlines.
Yep, that's one of them. Yep.
And then prohibiting ICE recruitment. I'm not sure.
Again, we've never been that I know of never been faced with that question. But we were actually. ICE was. We had a. This was before all of this other stuff. Right at the beginning, the immigration services come on Dearborn's campus for recruitment day, along with a bunch of every agency of the federal government. And someone brought it to my attention. This was a year ago, kind of before it got really, really ugly and illegal, what they were doing, murderous actually. And I called up our chancellor there, and he got them removed from the recruitment event.
Excellent.
So that's actually a great point that I hadn't even thought of.
We have one other question. That will be our last question from Emily Jernberg. Emily?
What I'm curious about is the guy who we had before on Monday, who's
Amir Makhlad. We interviewed Amir.
Yes. He mentioned that one of the doctors was on the brink of giving the information about a transgender student or patient to the administration. And I'm wondering, you mentioned something just now about keeping it confidential. I'm wondering if you can comment on his comment.
Well, I don't know the circumstance he's talking about. I have great respect for Makhlad. And so it's uncomfortable or tough to say this. There are many things that he and his campaign have stated that the university is doing, including just blatantly saying we have already given over transgender medical records. And frankly, that one is, and it isn't the only one, I guess, patently untrue is the best way to put it. A lie, I think, is another way to put it. And I don't think he's a bad person. And I don't know if he knows he's saying it incorrectly. If there is a single doctor who he claims is about to turn records over, that doesn't even make any sense, that some doctor's about to. I don't know if he's reading his mind, but no single doctor is even allowed to transmit records at the institution. And I have no doubt that if he would do it, because I have talked to our lawyers at our hospital in 201, they've all said, over our dead bodies, are we ever going to comply with this order? So if some doctor got a hold of some records and turned them over, I can't imagine. I would imagine he would be fired immediately, because that is against our stated policy.
Thank you, Emily. Well, I think that draws us to the end. We are recording. I want those who are watching the recording to understand that it is nighttime, and Paul is speaking to us from his car, and that's why it
It's
is so
creepy.
dark.
Yeah,
But only the lighting from your interior lights are your
it's true.
studio lighting. But
It's
we
true.
thank you. You've had a long day
It's
and a
okay.
challenging day, and we thank
Thanks.
you. So with that, I think, ladies and gentlemen,
I
I
would
thank you
just,
all for attending. Yeah.
yeah, I would just say it's a real honor to speak for your group, to your group. Thank you so much. Just the thesis that you're formed by is the right thesis at this time. And if you want, in the chat, I can put my phone number. If anyone ever wants to reach out to me directly and talk for any amount of time on any question, I would it would be my pleasure.